me ngā whānau katoa, no reira tuku atu nā whakaaro ki a rātou. Anei, etahi kupu kia tāpiri atu, hei pāinga mō ngā karakia, ko hinei ki runga i a tātou i te ata nei. Tuku te whakaaro nei, tuku te whakaaro roa, ke tuku kohu mai papa e puta whakarere. Ki te rangi nā te heke haukoti ti, haukoti poi anei te hau pupuhi e, tūriki whakatā, haumi e, hui e, tai. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, thank you, Councillor Hokianga. Any notices, Alison, or anything to update on? No. Apologies. Apology from Councillor Van Beek, from Councillor Lambert. Yes? Any others?
Oh, no, he's on.
Oh, he's come. Oh, welcome, Councillor Van Beek.
No, Lambert.
Oh, you've come online. Charlie, welcome. Are you all right? Let's start with that.
Good morning, yeah, all good.
All good, thank you.
We're high and dry. High
and dry, excellent. Any other apologies? Okay, I'm happy to move those in the chair. Thank you. Councillor Ormsby, conflicts of interest declarations need to be made. Confirmation of minutes of the Cyclone recovery meeting held 16th August. I am happy to move those, but I wondered, Chief Executive, if you might just comment briefly on the telemetry review that at that meeting we did talk about further follow-up paper to that and where that's at.
Indeed, and that will come back to a suitable committee or council meeting in the very near future. There's been a whole lot of work go on to clarify what was presented in that original paper and to ensure that the telemetry system is as robust as possible. So I'm just going to ask Anna to see if she could give us perhaps an idea of when that paper might be ready to come back to council.
Thank you. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you. So just a little bit of clarity around the telemetry reports that were presented on the 16th of August. As discussed in the paper, we engaged 2 subject matter experts to review and provide reports on, one, the telemetry performance from Graham Horrell, and the other one was the performance of Kahuranaki Station. So Graham Horrell is one of our subject matter experts with all his details laid out in the 16th of the 8th paper, and that report came through largely unedited. The information that we received from David Walker was in a letter report, which was then put into a more readable format, including pictures, etc., to enable readability. It's been corrected into a co-authored report, and during that process there was one sentence that the provenance of that information, we lacked clarity around that, and so that has been removed, and that was the sentence of the batteries were old and needed replacing. But that's the only edit to that paper apart from co-authorship.
Okay. A full paper will come back to council in the next...
Yes, whenever you'd like. We
so
can...
pretty much ready to come,
yes.
Chair. So suggest next month's council meeting?
Yes, full council. Thank you. Were there any other questions on the minutes from our previous meeting? Someone happy to second? Thank you, Councillor Ormsby. So we're actually moving to item 6, our Regional Recovery Agency presentation. Very warm welcome to Blair O'Keefe and to Ross McLeod, our Chair and Chief Executive of our Regional Recovery Agency. Really grateful for you coming in. Been following the work, obviously, through Louise, our Recovery Manager, through the updates, through the newsletter. Very keen to hear from you, I suppose, a stock take of where we're at and what you're seeing for the next 12 months ahead. We have about half an hour, so it would be excellent if we had some time for questions after the presentation. Thank you. Kia ora, welcome.
Morena, kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for having us here this morning. I just wanted to start by just acknowledging the impact of the cyclone and the impact on the loss of lives, loss of livelihoods, loss of assets and loss of well-being throughout the region, and know that everyone's had a tough time since that event and continues to work on the recovery. So I just want to acknowledge everyone in the region who's putting effort into supporting the recovery, and in that regard also want to pay tribute and thanks to the Regional Council for your role, both in supporting the establishment of our agency and the funding pathways for the government, and also your active support in helping the agency with the planning for the region and going about the recovery. So, excuse me, thank you very much for that. Ross is going to give you a brief presentation today just to outline kind of where we're at. Just to sort of start with that process, as a reminder, the agency was activated around March, April. We really only got going properly in July once we got full funding from the Crown confirmed at the very end of June, and during that time it's been quite a busy period mobilising the team and working with all the relevant stakeholders across the region. It's great that we've managed to secure to date sort of around $1 billion for the region and various recovery efforts for the primary sector, for all the asset impacts across the region. And as everyone's aware, there's more to do, and part of today's presentation will focus on some of that effort that we need to get into now, particularly with the new incoming government. There's obviously conversations we need to have to understand their appetite, interest and willingness to support us as we try and do more, having only really just got started on the recovery efforts. So with that intro, I'll just hand you over to Ross, and we're happy to take questions, as many as you've got whilst we're here. Thank you.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good to be with you here this morning to be able to give an update on the recovery and where things are heading, and particularly want to add my thanks to those of Blair's. We've enjoyed a good working relationship with Nick and his team, and Hinewai supporting with the leadership with the mayors. So really want to thank the Regional Council for their efforts, the work that's going in, particularly around flood protection, but the range of other things that the Regional Council is working to address as well. Louise and her team and the other Regional Council staff that are working closely with us across the broad range of recovery activities, whether that touches transport planning, all sorts of the areas that we're involved in. So really wanting to add my thanks and acknowledgement of the work and effort that's going in. Whoops.
Here, I think it's the wrong slide deck. It's Friday's slide deck from last week.
We've got the wrong presentation actually. Should have noticed that. I'm sorry about that.
Oh, I opened the wrong file.
We've got them here, so if you want to say, Ross, you're going to the second slide, we'll know what it is.
Okay,
it's one that says recovery process.
We've got the right one.
Oh, no, been there, done that too.
Quite versatile. We can talk to whatever presentation. I'm not sure we'll get it all right, but we'll give it a go.
Give a good crack.
Just in the middle at the top there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
That's it.
Might be easier.
It was well spotted.
Thank you.
Right. Looked familiar.
Just dawning on me that what was on the screen was different from. Okay, so I guess in terms of a progress report, the key thing I think has been how well the region has worked together in addressing this quite significant impacts on people from lives lost, but issues of damage, silt and debris across the Rohi, impacts on transport links, a whole range of psychosocial and other impacts. And the region has come together, the Matariki partners, councils and mana whenua organisations working with the public sector and NGOs and others to support communities to restore vital infrastructure, to address silt and debris, and to support businesses and other sectors that are working to address the recovery as well. Obviously, the fossil process and the negotiations with the government were a huge part of that work that the councils were engaged in, and the RRA was sort of coordinating at the forefront of. We've moved on from that to the implementation work and the planning around that, which is quite a critical part, and certainly I know taking up a lot of the headspace of your staff at the Regional Council is we move into the phase of delivering on flood protection and the other issues for the other councils. Standing up the recovery sort of apparatus has been part of the work, and working with communities and various sectors to seek funding. We have had about 1.5 billion in government funding allocated to the region at this stage. It wasn't all it was asked for, but it is going to make a difference in some of those areas, and obviously now turning our minds more towards resilience and some of the opportunities that emerge with investing in resilience. There's probably going to be $4 to $5 billion in funding that comes into the region, principally directed at infrastructure, and how we direct that and how it's channeled can obviously have some significant positive impacts, both in terms of what's delivered but also how it's delivered, and that's also a focus for us.
Did you say 4 to 5 billion coming into the region, Ross?
I would think so, yeah, over the long term, when you look at the program of particularly roading work and other things that needs to be, I mean, that's going to be over a 10 to 12 year window, I'd say, but you know, I think that's a broad sort of an estimate.
Unfunded at this stage, some of it, but
yeah.
So that includes the 1.5 today?
Yeah.
Is that largely out of that National Resilience Fund?
Well, I think as Blair said, it's unfunded at the moment, but I think a lot of it will be out of transport funding sources, and that's my estimate. But it's you know, if you look at the damage to the roading networks of the councils, that's over $1 billion. If you look at the you know, what's sort of being promulgated with respect to the state highways, there'll be investment around power infrastructure and other things. So. It may be out as an estimate, but I think it's a reasonable one to work on at the moment. I think, and again, I won't touch too much on this, but you know, there's obviously been the first iteration of the recovery plan. There's been a lot of work involved, and you know, essentially our key role is, why we were set up was to coordinate across the region and with government. So a lot of work going into that. Quite a lot of work assisting the Matariki partners with their own individual projects. So we've been working closely with Nick's team on silt and debris, sort of trying to secure more funding for that. It seems to be an ongoing area of activity. We've been working with Mangahara Tangitu on some of their Category 3 fossil sort of negotiation issues. Working with Te Waihanga on the infrastructure pipeline of work, planning out what the program's going to be and how that might be managed and what the workforce requirements look like. And there's a lot of phasing and sequencing work to do there still, and offering a government relations sort of capability as part of the work that we've been doing. So just, I guess, recapping on our context, as Blair said, we were established by the Matariki Governance Group with government support, you know, fully funded by the government through to June 2025 to support regional recovery efforts. We've got that governance, dual sort of governance sort of overview. We are not a decision maker, obviously, but do have a role in priority setting in coordinating advocacy and assurance to government and supporting our partner organisations within the region. I think as we move forward with infrastructure, resilience and investment taking a big part, that programming and phasing and sequencing role is going to become more and more central to our work, and that's been some of that's been locked into the agreement with the Crown around the fossil infrastructure investment, where the Crown wants the RRA to play a role in that program management and monitoring. One of the things I've talked about the transition there to that resilience. We've still got quite a bit of restoration work to roll out. It's a fairly thick and long tail, but starting to think about how we can build resilience into our systems and networks, and how we can capture opportunities that come along with doing that. If you're looking at State Highway 2 North and you're looking at resilience around that and taking out some of the weak spots, you also get to, well, is there an opportunity to really reduce the commute between Napier and Wairoa and the economic advantages that come with that? So that's something we're very keen to work with Waka Kotahi on and others to look at how that can be advanced. Obviously, as I said before, the aspirations in the first round of resilience plans and locality plans that went into the regional plan, they were larger than the resources available, given the current fiscal position the government is in. So there's a lot of unfunded things in there, but there are a lot of things that were funded. And I think we're now waiting to see how the election pans out and then re-engage with government in the post-election period. And you know, along with the chief executives, we're equipping the region to be able to do that on a strong basis.
And have we had any indication of when the new government might meet to discuss steps forward?
We're sort of we're expecting that a government will be sworn in next week at some stage. That's not written in stone anywhere, but that's just some of the intelligence we've picked up. And then obviously they'll probably have a few things to do, but certainly they're hearing that engaging with Hawke's Bay on recovery issues is a reasonably important thing in their and the things they need to do. So we're expecting that to occur before Christmas, and we're actively working to support that with the CEOs and others. Just looking a little bit more at that restoration phase work, obviously the first iteration recovery plan's gone to government and there's been engagement on that. You'll have seen quite a lot of government response to that, the investments in infrastructure and property buyouts through the fossil negotiations, funding announcements towards, you know, the Kanoa Fund to support the primary sector businesses affected, tourism support, regional business partners, additional support. Again, some of those things, not all that we asked for, but some support coming our way. Waka Kotahi obviously taking initial investment actions and have formed the Trek Alliance with Kiwi Rail and some partners. That initial work is very much on restoration and restoring links. There's been funding through the public sector in terms of community and whānau sector support, quite a lot in psychosocial support, and there's been other funding coming via BAU sort of votes into various areas of recovery support. And I guess the clear message we've had from government is that the resourcing available doesn't meet all the things asked for, that the region needs to get on and move forward its own priorities where that it thinks need to be moved forward, but also that round two, I guess, the budget cycle, 4-year budget cycle commencing in 24 is likely to be asked to, you know, submit us, not perhaps the large list of things that was submitted in Plan 1, but really nail down what the priorities are. So that's an area that the region's looking at in terms of looking at a briefing to incoming ministers, our recovery plan 2.0, quite a tightly focused set of priorities, and then how we feed that into the budget and planning cycles. Peter.
Just a question on the restoration resilient plan. How does that, was there any mention of the marae? And obviously they go for restoration, and then 60% of the maraes are taken out in Ahuriri at the moment. So I couldn't see in the plan how that was factored into the equation.
I think those issues were raised in the plan. We had plans from PSG and hapu groups that signalled those areas. I think they are being likely to be picked up on a case-by-case basis if they are picked up. Certainly the marae at Tangoil is a focus of the negotiations for the Category 3 land that's happening in that area. So I think it will be, there's been no broad allocation from the government of funding, so it will need to be addressed on a case-by-case basis.
So you're saying individual maraes need to lobby government? And I think of Motu, I chair Motu, and then obviously we're rebuilding, but limited support, and we're doing things ourselves, and same for a lot of the other maraes. So, and I went for a visit to all the maraes yesterday with the independent group that was going through the review, and I just listened to all the kōrero that went on, and obviously a lot of concerns are raised.
I think probably my observation is that while there may not have been broad allocations of recovery-specific funding for marae or other particular projects, there are BAU sources of funding that are being accessed for some projects. So I think working through those, some of those with DIA and other agencies may be the best way forward.
I think the wider issue that Mr Eden's also raising is that the whenua Māori conversations were direct with government rather than through regional council. And of course our next paper is on looking to wind up this Cyclone Recovery Committee, which will go back to EICC, our Environment Committee, and just picking up those concerns around whenua Māori of their direct conversations with government, and wanting to make sure through the RRA that there's an advocacy or a connection there to make sure that those pieces are picked up where they may have been picked up through some of our teams currently. So is it also TPK that some of those conversations are happening, or is it really DIA?
Well, DIA and TPK are providing, but I suppose for yourselves, and how does that function in the equation?
Well, we're certainly happy to help, and we've been primarily our engagement has been at PSGE level, but we're certainly happy to help where we can aid and provide assistance. We're working actively alongside some of the PSGs and marae, so very happy to have further conversations. I guess another reflection would be a lot of the focus at the moment has been on marae on Category 3 land, and I'm imagining Motiora is probably Category 2 or Category 1.
Category 2, yeah.
Yeah, so, but very happy to have follow-up conversations.
Thank you. And Councillor Ormsby?
Yeah, kia ora, Chair. Kia ora, kōrua. My question's around what you raised, Ross, around restoration versus resilience versus the resource that the Crown have sort of signalled to us around all the asks that we had in our first edition of the recovery plan. So from your point of view, and it can go to both you, Ross, and Blair, is what indicators and how confident as a region are we around what we're asking for in the resilience space versus a restoration plan? Because, resource can only go so far to build resilience. So what are some of the signals that you're getting from Crown, from officials and government agency around how far resilience can actually go for our region?
From my perspective, I think things are being addressed, and this may not be entirely fair, but they're being addressed on a sort of work stream or infrastructure asset basis, asset by asset. So if we look at transport, for instance, which is where a significant proportion of the damage has occurred, you see Waka Kotahi starting to think about resilience and how you make some of those key lifeline routes less susceptible to future impacts, and I think that's a really good thing. But then we've got to be cognizant of the context of, the funding picture where the National Land Transport Fund is at. It's good that the $6 billion over 4 years for resilience has been allocated. That's for the whole country, or particularly the highest impacted region. It's not just for the East Coast. But I think the signals are there that those resilience issues are going to be addressed. It's just a matter of over time aligning the funding with those issues. I think, part of me is optimistic because if you look at Christchurch, it's 12 years on from the earthquakes, they're still undertaking recovery projects. And this isn't going to happen, even though everybody's put their work programs in that it's going to happen into the next 2 to 5 years. There's not going to be the funding to do it in 2 to 5 years, or the workforce. So I think over time the signals are there that we, there is a alignment of intention to address resilience. I think we need to be focused as a region that we don't get so far and then stop if we go on a piece-by-piece business case model where the cost benefit for the next investment reduces when you've done the last one already. State Highway 5 resilience, State Highway 2 North resilience, the 4-laning of the expressway, State Highway 50 through Central Hawke's Bay. Those are key routes with resilience issues and the opportunity to make a real difference for the region. And then in the local roading networks as well, if you think about the freight distribution strategy and inputs into that last, that farm gate, orchard gate to the to processing all the arterial is really important part of that network, where we need to be looking at resilience and hoping that the funding is made available for that, again, over that sort of 10-year window.
I just add a couple of comments to that. For the restoration piece, that's the sticking plaster part of the solution we have to work on. I think the headline there is that the government's not going to fund everything, and the message from the Crown is it's not its responsibility to pay for everything, and we saw that through some of the negotiations, that there's a view that private parties and the region need to find a way to pay for that, and that short-term sticking plaster piece where every entity in the region's finding its own way to fund what it can, and we've largely got what we've got from the government on that, and there might be a little bit more to get in the short term, but the longer term picture, as Ross pointed out, is a timing issue. And I think as much as we've had a crisis, it creates an opportunity for us to have a long-term strategic view of the priorities in the region. We need to look past the next couple of years for funding and actually put together a 10 plus 20-year kind of view of funding for infrastructure for the region. And that needs to be able to look through the governments of the day so that we are developing a strategic coordinated infrastructure plan for the region that builds that resilience in. And who pays for that remains the big question we have to work on. And as Ross will talk to in a minute, in terms of each annual budget the government goes through, our goal as a collective region is to put our case in and secure as much as we can for the immediate and the longer term funding pathways, and then work out how we pay for the rest ourselves, which unfortunately is the reality of life. So,
But as you say, it's having that 10 or 15-year plan ahead that we're working towards, a coordinated plan across the region.
Thank you for painting that broader picture.
Councillor Curtin.
Yeah, thank you. Just picking up on that, and I think you've sort of hit the nail on the head. We can't expect the cavalry to come over the hill from central government. We're on our own to some extent. But I'm just interested to know how we play this out. We've got the regional council obviously standing up river protection, trying to plug that hole. And we haven't worked out a plan to build better yet, but we're working on that. We've got some avenues through Wakakatahi to look at the roading network, but we've got a whole range of other lifeline infrastructure that needs coordinating and protecting. For example, our vulnerability around power supply, telecommunications was another major, cut off from say health resources, etc. Another. We've got 5 councils There needs to be some measure of, if you like, agreement around if you're going to put a bridge back up, how high is it going to be and what does it look like. So we've got this mix of or a mix of high priority development to take place, and yet we're a diverse region, diverse governance, and assets that are not immediately available to us. How do we bridge this thing?
I mean, start.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great question, and it's actually the opportunity that's presented to us as a region from this event, that we can rapidly increase our maturity around how we plan our asset management for the region. And there's been a lot of good work done, but it's highlighted that the integration of that work across the critical infrastructure in the region could be improved, I think, with resilience in mind in particular, and for planning workforce, as Ross has touched on a couple of times already. We're simply just not going to be able to get all the work done. We're going to need 8,000 new employees in the next 5 years if we're going to do all the work we think we're going to do, and we don't have homes for nearly all of them. So we've got some unpicking to do there. So the team has stood up an infrastructure working group to bring together a lot of those parties within the region, power, telecoms, the councils and other parties, to start to paint that picture of what were the issues that were there before, what are the issues that are there now, what's the funding requirements, and then most importantly in terms of our entity as the role as an integrator is then to try and get all those bits to kind of hang together and not to usurp some of the systems that are already in place within the region, like the RLTP, but to actually enhance that by broadening it out to some of those other factors that weren't necessarily all included in a highly integrated way. So that's quite a lot of the work to be done. It has started already, and there's been a number of engagements across those entities within the region. And the good news is that the appetite from all the parties in the region is exceptionally high to be part of those conversations. The test for us is, can we keep those, those groups alive and working together as we work through the hard part of fixing things, and then the harder part of planning for the future.
So just to add a little bit of detail to that, Unison have agreed to take the lead on the electricity sector resilience sort of planning with Transpower. They've agreed terms of reference for that. We sort of suggested it was a white paper. I think they've called it something different, but they're planning to have that first piece of work done by December, looking at the scope for resilience sort of options, investments that needed. Transpower's done some initial work around their Redcliffe station, but that's also looking at resilience into the future as decarbonisation and other things happen across the network. READA have for us commissioned a piece of work on telecoms resilience, and that is well underway. We've had input into that, and we'll be engaging, and that's engaging with the telco sector obviously as well, but we'll be engaging with them once that piece of work has become available, which shouldn't be too far off. The councils are working together quite well in developing some of their repair programs with the various impacts, particularly on the rural roading networks, Wairoa, Central Hawke's Bay and Hastings. Hastings are also working closely with Napier on the bridge connections that have been knocked out. And they've also made good progress because they're having to for the Crown-funded pieces of those works through infrastructure. So I agree with Blair, that's a very good question and is part of the challenge. But so far we're seeing people working together well in a coordinated fashion. There's been agreement that the interrelation with your own work on flood protection and the bridge links across rivers, there needs to be design collaboration there so that things are being designed at the right height. That also flows through to the likes of, the Awatoto bridges on rail and state highways when we get to the final solutions for those. So those issues are all in people's minds. There are good conversations going on. the key challenge is making sure that coordination and goodwill continues into the future.
Sounds excellent.
Well, early days.
It does sound
Early
excellent.
days.
It hasn't gone wrong yet. So that's good.
We are getting a little bit short on time. We've got Councillor Rodley, but do you have many more slides, Ross?
I can whiz through them.
Let's take Councillor Rodley's question.
I was going to say, thank you for your fulsome answer. That was my question.
Oh, that was your question too. Okay. All right. Thanks, Ross.
And I think, Joe, just those, our mission from the region really is building back better, safer and smarter. And those key questions, how do we ensure what we rebuild and restore is resilience? How do we ensure the investment in recovery that the money I talked about before is used to capture opportunities and improvements? And then how do we channel that investment so that it's maximising benefits, whether that's through workforce development, legacy sort of assets left behind, or all manner of things, progressive procurement. Those are sort of some of the key areas of focus.
Councillor McIntosh?
Ross, your focus on resilience is not just resilience in the event of a flood, is it?
No, obviously the tendency is to focus on the event you've just had, but there are other dimensions to resilience that need to be thought about.
Yeah, we'll just add some colour to that. So the least intelligent thing we could do is plan our future around the fact we had a flood in the past. We need to plan our future around all of the risks that are in front of us, and from a critical infrastructure planning perspective, a regional economic resilience perspective, we need to widen that lens, and that's certainly the intent from the agency. Even though we're called a recovery agency, our bias is more towards helping the region plan for whatever the future holds on the back of what happened in the past. And a great example of that is water security, where, actually capturing water as opposed to diverting it somewhere else as a priority is a critical risk for the region to manage, and will be one of, the priorities that we believe needs to be articulated on an ongoing basis for the region, because yesterday it was too much water to deal with, tomorrow it will be not enough, and as a region we've got to be really strategic in how we move forward from here.
You could be quoting Councillor McIntosh. Councillor Harding?
Kia ora, Chair. Kia ora kōrua. Look, my question is around engagement with the public and the extent of visibility and visibility, buy-in, but also influence that the public may expect to have in this sort of a long-term planning process. So with the best will in the world, it's a fantastic approach in terms of having a really hard look and developing a really long-term infrastructure program, but best will in the world, probably at least half of that cost, let's say, is going to come back to the ratepayers of Hawke's Bay. So my question is, at what point do they get to have be able to indicate what their priorities may be, or because at some point you're going to have to make value judgments or judgment based on a set of criteria about what happens and when it happens. So prioritisation, also what happens and what doesn't.
Great.
What's the engagement, and also how that will work into the decisions and the individual work programs of councils like our one.
Individual councils, yeah.
It's a great question. So there's a couple of key points in response to that. Firstly, the recovery agency is not a community-facing entity. So from our perspective, we're working with the councils, PSGEs, government agencies and other major infrastructure providers in the region, and so we won't be directly engaging with the community because that's not our role, and we've only got a small team of half a dozen odd people, and so that's part one of the story. Part two is there are platforms and processes already in place for engagement with the public, the likes of your own LTP and other processes. So our intention's to kind of dovetail into those processes and work with and through your own direct engagement with the community. And obviously there's 5 councils and the PSGs have their own means of doing that as well. And so we have to do some synchronisation around that. And for your LTP process in particular, it's how does that dovetail into the regional piece? So it's got to dovetail in both directions so that we can form a full regional view on these things. We are going to have to push a top-down approach to coming up with the initial set of priorities because we've got urgency around a new government coming in. We've got a budget 24 timetable coming up, so we've only now got a matter of weeks for us to really get in front of the new government in the early new year to go, these are the top priorities. I don't think there's anything going to be on that list that anyone would go, well, that's a dumb idea, because they're all going to be pretty obvious, regional resilience infrastructure items. I think where the conversation will flow is what else piece is probably, what's not on that list and how do we discuss that as a regional priority. And we've got to work through with the likes of yourselves and the other councils and other parties in the region to go, how does that work from a community engagement perspective? So that's kind of the headline answer, is it's via existing platforms, not looking to in any way override those, making sure that there is an opportunity for the community to connect. And I guess we're probably looking to you more than the other way around, just to make sure that feedback is coming into what essentially is always a challenging task to coordinate multiple players and come up with a view of what is the right answer. And that's really kind of what we're here to do, is do that, and we might have to make some calls along the way that says everyone doesn't agree, but this is what we have to throw up for now. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it gives useful clarity. What it does is put more weight on, more importance to what we do regionally in terms of our spatial planning in the future, and that is going to be the route that if we don't get it right, then we won't maximise our opportunities in recovery.
I agree, and I think there's an opportunity with all these things as a region to review how that stuff works currently versus how it could work in the future, and what's in scope and out of scope, and who leads. All of those things, require ongoing assessment as we lean into this. Do you want anything to that, Ross?
No, I thought that was a very good answer, Mr. Chairman. But just as you were talking there, Councillor Harding, about the importance of spatial planning, we were just having a conversation yesterday, the CEs, about how this is leading forward into that sort of dimension of thinking as we start to think about resilience, how we're accommodating growth into the future, very, very much part of the thinking.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ross.
So that slide is just an interesting one. We're sort of moving, I guess, the plan point 1.0 was around sort of that restoration, the focus really, and starting to think about what's the adaptive and transformative capacity as we move into those longer term thinking. And just sort of looking at some of the priority areas and how we are in that move space, some of the key areas, silt and debris is obviously primarily about restoration. But when we're looking at housing impacts, the short term is about temporary accommodation and providing help for people at a hard time. We had a housing crisis, particularly in the urban areas of Hawke's Bay, but also in central Hawke's Bay and Wairoa. Before the cyclone didn't help. There's programs going on. There's some really good programs that PSGEs are leading in housing with MHUD. Looking at how we address, housing needs, infrastructure again, moving from restoring connections into resilient electricity. Healthcare is another broader priority in the regional list as we're working through the BIM. Water security, again, one of those. Other areas of priorities key on our list, and key one we're working with Nick and his team is in that area of regulatory relief. How do we build the flood protection that we need and get that happening quickly when faced with the current sort of consenting pathways. So that's a key area of focus for us. Workforce development and freight and that transport funding, getting that enhanced FAR rate locked in for some of the work that needs to be done is going to be crucial for our councils with those large rural roading networks. And that's just our own internal sort of way of sort of describing some of the work we're doing, you know, that resilience and opportunity capture work and the way we're going about that, working with and for our partner organisations and some of the technical delivery sort of mechanisms. And that's really just the outlook over the next few months. Our focus at the moment on preparing a BIM for the incoming government and then getting Plan 2.0 ready to feed into the budget process. We've also got work happening around that. We're trying to resource up to play a role in that programming and sequencing of some of those infrastructure programs, brokering those conversations across the region with external partners, really trying to drive the priorities that external partners like Waka Kotahi land on are driven by the region's priorities. That's sort of become a bit of a catch-cry, so I'll be getting sick of the sound of me saying it. And then, you know, working into what the programs and implementation of those look like into the future. So that's the end of the presentation, Madam Chair. Happy to answer any questions, but thank you for the opportunities, and again, thank you to the Council for the myriad support that's being provided and the close working relationships that are in existence.
Just perhaps a closing comment from me, and happy to take any other questions if you have time. The one thing that's not on the slide and we haven't discussed today is confidence, and I think for the region it's the essential ingredient for a fantastic future for this region. Yes, we've got challenges, there are opportunities here, but ultimately what's going to underpin our ability to tap into the funding from the Crown and to drive a successful region is the confidence that we can. And I think all of us have a really essential role to play in sort of moving out of the dark mood we've been in over the last 6 months with the foul weather and the impacts, and finding a way to really energise ourselves with the confidence that we can. And I just think that's going to be the part that brings investment into the region. It's going to be the part that lifts the spirits and allows existing entities to double down on their existing investments and look to growth. So that's just a closing comment from me.
Yeah, I agree, and I think your Plan 2.0 and the infrastructure plan is going to be a big part in that confidence, seeing that the infrastructure working groups coming up with a plan that we can all see the value in will be a huge part of that. But before we wind up, I might just ask our Chief Executive to add a few words.
Just through you, Chair, just to say a huge thank you to Blair and Ross and the team at the RRA. I think the last few months of coordination across the region, supporting leaders such as our Chair, mayors, leaders from Tangata Whenua, wouldn't have been possible without having a body to coordinate all of that across the region. And it's made a huge difference to our interactions with government to have the focus that the RRA has brought to that process. So I think it's been hugely valuable, and I think, Chair, along with the RRA team, you've pointed to one of the real opportunities we've got over the next 4 to 5 years, and that's around making sure we deliver the best sets of infrastructure we can for communities across the region. We won't see this scale of investment in the region again for a long time, provided we don't have some other natural disaster. So there's a real opportunity to make the best of it, and part of that is wrangling the agencies of central government to do the best they can for the region, particularly where we look at things like roading and the development of rail networks. So I think there's a critical role that the RRA is going to play in helping us deliver on that infrastructure program. So just to return the thanks to the team here for their work in recent months.
Thank you, Chief. Chair, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, thank you. Just to acknowledge the sentiment from our CE, and thank you both, particularly in the negotiations with Crown around the fossil work. We couldn't have done it really without you connecting us with Crown and those officials. And then it's seen time and time again with the immediate silt funding that was received from the caretaker government. So your role is vital going forward as a region, and just really thank you for all the effort in the coordinating. It's a huge job, and you're right, confidence is our playing hand. And as a strength across the region, we're seen to Crown as being that. So you play a huge part in that. Thank you.
Excellent. We're just going to move to receive the report. Are you
Happy to receive the report.
I'm happy to second that from the chair, yes. And a warm thank you from all of us. You've heard how well that relationship's working. We're looking forward to seeing the next plan and to hear how your first conversations with the new government go. Of course, yeah. Thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Is it you, Dizzy? Yeah. We're moving into our next paper around the wind-up of the Cyclone Recovery Committee.
Have a good meeting. Thank you.
Good. See you next year.
Yes.
See you.
If it doesn't, could you maybe try sending just the return?
You will?
Yeah.
Oh, that would be excellent.
Chair, before we do that,
Yes.
I just feel duty bound in part for the benefit of anyone that may be either now or in the future watching into this, just to assure our communities that there is a very close connection between the RRA and the Regional Transport Committee. A lot of the resilience work that Councillor Ormsby was referring to and the scale of funding that Ross was referring to is directed to that transport future. Two of our highest priority projects are going to be the Whakavotahi, Hawke's Bay and Tairāwhiti Wairoa resilience recovery projects for the State Highway 2 and 5 corridors. We are ensuring that resilience is at the heart of our next regional transport plan and that there is close integration between transport infrastructure for the future and our natural hazard management systems, including flood protection assets. So I just wanted to ensure that that part of the system is being joined up as well, as closely as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Very important. And I'll preface, before I move on to our Chief Executive, that this paper also, with a conversation around winding up the Cyclone Recovery Committee and taking it back to EICC, is in no way suggesting that that the cyclone recovery is finished, or that work is still not to be done, or that people are still not in difficult situations. More that, in terms of our work streams and our alignments, that this could be an appropriate time. So I'll preface with that, and then I'll let the Chief Executive preface something as well.
Thank you, Madam.
Thank
you, Madam Chair, and I'll hand over to Louise in a second, our recovery manager, who has been super busy for many months now, and Dizzy, who has done a huge amount of work to support recovery interactions with governance in particular. For me, one of the values of this proposition in front of you in the paper is that essentially recovery has become BAU for this council for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And as you deliberate and design your LTP proposition to go out to the community, various elements of recovery will be a critical part of that. And but they spread right across the BAU business now of the council. We will see a significant increase in our infrastructure asset work. We'll go from a $10 million a year business to a $50 million a year business in terms of our infrastructure management. There's clearly longer term work to do around how we support management of hill country in particular. And across all of that, our enduring and ability to grow our partnerships with mana whenua are going to be critical to deliver all of that. It feels as though council has got committees that deal with all of those things. So there's an opportunity to really embed that recovery into the BAU business of the council. I think hence the paper in front of you, and I'll just hand over, with your leave, to Dizzy and Louise to add anything.
Thank you.
Further.
Kia ora, councillors. I think kind of stolen our thunder here. No, there's not much to add. This, as Nick said, it proposes that the time is right to revert back to the EICC, and that the terms of reference for EICC are broad enough to encompass the recovery work. The paper itself just does a quick recap of the process that you went through to decide to change from Environment Integrated Catchment Committee to the Cyclone Recovery Committee. That was at the first normal meeting following the cyclone. That decision was made. Then there were 5 meetings of the committee, and it just briefly outlines in section 8 the types of papers and topics that were considered by the committee. And I think in the paper it just reiterates that it did provide, I think, by having a dedicated cyclone committee, a public forum to hear some decisions that were being made across parties and at fast pace. So I think it did serve its purpose. Louise?
No, not really. I echo everything that Nick and Desi has said. It's been an opportunity to coordinate the work that this organisation has done into this recovery space. But as Nick says, that work and those work streams will transition into our new BAU, and there are competent teams and managers in those spaces that can continue to report to the EICC committee as they would under normal circumstances. So. Excellent. So just questions or clarifications of the staff. We can leave some comments for later. So are there questions or clarifications from anyone?
It's just a very straightforward one, just to ensure or assure myself that the terms of reference we're reverting to is precisely the terms of reference that the EICC had before we moved to cyclone recovery. So it's just going back to exactly what, there's no changes made to it?
That's right.
Okay.
Just one add to that is in the recommendations, I just would like to add a sentence saying to tighten up all terms of reference, I think we should say what the quorum is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was going to be the second question. I didn't quite understand the last clause of 2.3, specifying quorum as a majority members and any changes agreed at the meeting. So,
any changes to the terms of reference that you want to make.
Oh.
Sorry.
Not to the quorum.
Not
Yes.
to the quorum.
Yeah.
No.
Councillor Roadley?
Is now the appropriate time to discuss, to further on to that, or do you want to do that in discussion?
No questions for staff, please? Yep.
I am just wondering if there's an opportunity now to refresh those terms of reference before we re-adopt them. Can we do that?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now?
You can certainly, yeah, we can discuss it or propose it.
Well, I'm interested in that, given the, I wouldn't say heightened responsibility, because it's always been a very responsible, we've got all these wicked challenges ahead to face, and this being our public facing part of that work, that could we consider in the terms of reference and the membership that looking at the Māori Committee and the RPC, that we could reflect the importance of that by including the chairs in that representation, so that they've really got proper.
Sorry, Councillor Roadley, are you suggesting that the terms of reference are that the chairs of both those committees are the representatives?
Yes. Well, I'd like that discussion as to whether that would be seen as a proper recognition of the importance that the work that's coming through this committee.
So currently the chairs of those committees, or the committees themselves, select their representative?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. And as I understand it, I'm sorry to interrupt there, but I did have a brief conversation with the chair of the Māori Committee. I wasn't able to with the RPC, who suggested they would prefer to keep that as their decision within their committees. So I'll just put that there.
I was just going to add that it has in the past often been the chair that has been appointed, but that has been a decision of the respective committees.
Yeah, and I suppose I'd comment, I'd say the same thing, would make that decision in the House who represents on this board, not leave that up to council. So I suppose the dictator would come on what board that represents our committee, and just say that's.
Yeah, just an observation that within the RPC and also a member of the Māori Committee is often with all our committees, joint committees, where we ask for memberships, those committees decide what expertise is actually available as well, which we may not have sight of. So I think it is best to leave it to those committees to decide the dynamic of what's going on and what time is available to them. That's just a reflection, being a member of both RPC and Māori Committee.
Any other comments? Okay. Questions? Councillor Harding?
Oh, no question, just happy to move the paper if we got to that point, Chair.
Yes, no more questions. Yes, do we have a seconder? Yes, thank you, Councillor Williams. So would you like to speak now, or would you like to hear
Just
other
very
comments?
briefly,
Yeah,
through you, Chair, just to thank the staff for a very efficient report that we don't have to debate at length, and also thank our CEO for filling in the gap and allaying my concerns around the specificity of recovery in the context of our terms of reference, because the one question I had was actually whether we should embed recovery, that function, in our terms of reference, but I'm now satisfied that we don't need to. So happy to move as tabled. Thank you.
Councillor Williams?
Thank you.
Any other comments? Discussion? No? Motion on the table. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Carried. Thank you. And thanks very much, Louise, particularly for your incredible amount of work that's gone into this first resilience plan and the ongoing work. It's been extraordinary. And I know that even though this revision's happening, it's not going to take any work off your table. So huge thank you from all of us, and we're looking forward to hearing, as we know we will through these other committees, the work as it continues. Yeah.
Certainly, yeah, the work doesn't stop. It'll carry on. You'll just hear it in a different format. But thank you. The team's worked very hard, and I appreciate all the support that we've had from across the organisation. So thank you.
We have one more decision item before lunch. This is the Biosecurity Annual Report, and we have to present Matt. It's your presentation, isn't it, Matt?
It is.
Welcome to the table. Mark's here too, Mark Mitchell. He's our team lead for biosecurity and biodiversity, for those of you who haven't met him. And this is Matt's first presentation to us. So we're going to watch with interest and be very supportive, Matt. Yeah.
Cheers.
Yeah, sure.
Kia ora, everybody. My name is Matt Short. I'm the biosecurity lead here at Regional Council. I'm reasonably new to my role, but yeah, hopefully I can have a good crack at this and you learn something. So the Regional Pest Management Plan, just going to start with a bit of context. It's our main statutory document for implementing the Biosecurity Act for regional councils. Just provides us our framework for managing pests through the region. It gives us our powers under the Biosecurity Act to deliver the relevant objectives under the plan. Our current RPMP has pest plants, pest animals, marine pests and phytosanitary pests. And under the Biosecurity Act, there's a couple of sections in there. So one of them deals with regional leadership, and the other one deals with the fact that we actually have to have a RPMP. It's a statutory requirement. So it's not something that's just nice to have, it's something that we actually have to do. And it's a 20-year plan. So we've got 63 pests in the region, grouped into 5 broad categories. Exclusion pests, so that's the first one. The benefit in exclusion pests is keeping them out. They are generally reserved for the worst of the worst, but they're still region specific. So yeah, the benefit is we want to keep these out. Eradication, that's reasonably simple. Reduce the numbers to 0. A progressive containment, which is we mitigate impacts related to the pest by confining it to a specific geographical area, and just reduce numbers region-wide as well. And sustained control, so this is for ones that are reasonably well established, and the idea there is to just hold populations to maximum acceptable levels over the duration of the plan and just mitigate impacts of the spread of the pest. And then we have site-led pests, which control of pests in basically a smaller defined area. The site is the most important thing, so there might be biodiversity or ecological values that we're trying to protect there. So the focus is more so on the site and what we're protecting, and then you kind of tailor your control around the site. So what have we achieved? We've monitored 308,000 hectares as part of the PCA program, which is approximately 46% of the entire area of the PCA program. So our target RTC rate for that program is 4%, and the overall monitoring came in at 1.5%. We still had 44 properties fail, and staff worked with those landowners to fix the opossum issues. So if you have a scale of 1 to 10, the threshold that we have to hold possums at is a 4, at or below. So anything above a 4 on a monitored property is a fail, and anything below a 4 is a pass. So if the average rate, the RTC that's come up is 1.5%, so that's the average of all the rest of the properties that passed. So that's quite a long way below 4%, so it's a pretty good result. Treated 194 rook nests. So if you refer to page 16 of the annual report, if you've got it in front of you, you'll note a graph showing the last 20 years of rook control. There's been a pretty massive reduction in the amount of nests that we've recorded, but over the last couple of years, we're just starting to see a slow uptick in the numbers. So we might need to apply a little more pressure in our rook program. Rooks are designated as an eradication pest, and what we don't want is to be in a situation where we're just keeping them at some sort of maintenance level. What we really want to be pushing for is eradication. We've treated 3 marine pest incursions successfully. So the marine biosecurity program is going pretty well. We've got some pretty strong stakeholder relationships through the marine sector, and so as a result, we're just getting a bit more, reporting on dirty holes and sort of suspect structures. So we've responded to 3 incursions: white bulb, sea squirt, and club tunicate. So club tunicate's actually an exclusion pest, so it's one we want to keep out of the region. So it's a really good one to catch before it got too bad. And all of those treatments were done with encapsulation. So the pest plant team have been pretty busy, just under 2,500 visits. This is actually an increase of 606 visits on the past year. So a visit encompasses quite a few things, but it could include surveillance, contractor auditing, actual control work, biocontrol releases, machinery washdown inspections, plant identification. There's a reasonably long list of things. And most of these visits happen between October and March because that's when everything is flowering and seeding. So quite a busy period for the team and quite a bit of work to cram into a short space of time. And we've done 32,000 hectares surveyed and controlled for wild conifers. So the MPI give us a bit of funding to conduct this work, and we have 2 MPI-run management units. They don't follow any regional boundary or DOC district boundary. They're more about protecting the central plateau. So the 2 that we deal with are the Rangitaiki and the Kaimanawa areas. So they essentially go from our regional boundary, which is just north of Taupo Road, south through the back of the Kawika Forest Park, Kaimanawa Forest Park, through a lot of multiple ownership Māori land, and it essentially ends just on the boundary of the Ruahine Forest Park. So quite a decent sized bit of real estate to patrol. And all of our work has happened on private land, and probably 90% of it is multiple ownership Māori land. We've been collaborating with DOC strategically as they manage wilding pines on Crown land. Like you took this photo here, this is in the northern Ruahine Range. So you can see the sort of environment that wilding conifers grow on. But this is essentially bare rock. It does present some challenges as far as control goes. So what are our key challenges facing us? So mostly thanks to MPI's National Wild and Conifer Control Program, we've made some pretty good gains over the last 7 years in the Central Plateau, and they've funded us to the tune of $500,000 over the last 7 years. So the Central Plateau is our main focus area in the North Island, and most places now are in sort of maintenance mode after the initial knockdown work. So the predominant base of coning trees is more or less eliminated, and we're just getting regeneration, regrowth from the seed bank that's already in the ground. So the reason that we put in a lot of effort into wild and conifers is for biodiversity. If you let wilding pines get away, they grow fast, they seed prolifically, seed can travel a long way, and if you really let them go, they form dense thickets that don't support a whole lot of life, native or otherwise. So the work is mostly to protect rare ecosystems, such as frost flats, and to keep wildings out of Kawika Forest Park, Kaimanawa Forest Park, and Ruahine Forest Parks. So there's a collective group of us involving regional council staff from across the Central Plateau and local district staff as well. This collective's been operating for 7 years, and we try and collaborate strategically so that our priorities aren't just sort of thinking about ourselves. We try to apply a regional, a full-on lens of the whole area, the whole Central Plateau area, to make sure that we're not necessarily doing things that counteract the overall objective to keep the Central Plateau free of wilding pines and free of any reinvasion. So the transition of the Possum Control Area program to contracted delivery has been parked. So we took a partial plan review last year of the program, where it was going to be amended to transition from occupier responsibility to contracted delivery managed by ourselves. This does require a bit of investment by council, so due to the cyclone, obviously it's parked until the next long-term plan run. So what we'll do is carry on working with land occupiers to make sure that they're aware of this, and that they're still responsible for maintaining low possum numbers until the work ends up funded. Next big challenge is alligator weed.
I've just got to pop for a meeting, but I just want to comment, I'll come back, but on the control and the joint project obviously on the Rangtai, obviously, for that conifer control, and then it's good to see that all being taken out. It might be a joint project with Taupo District Council or Regional Council, so it's been a good project. And then I know we've been involved with the Tauhara Maunga when you go into Taupo on the right-hand side, and we've poisoned all those trees just to stop the seed dispersal. So that's good, and yeah, I suppose I support that conifer obviously control, because it takes over in those native bush areas, especially in that low-lying scrub. And it's good to see that work being done. I know we were contacted around the work up in Whare Toto on the back of Tamatai up in Mohaka, and it's good isolated area, only accessed by helicopter, so it's good to see that work going on there, because it'll spread its all Manuka in that top just below Poronui Station and that. So yeah, good work. So I just thought I'd comment on that. And obviously with the pest control, obviously there's a spike in rats at the moment. We're doing a lot of pest control, and just building that in the fact, because when you factor in rats going up in population, then states and ferrets and that going up, and then we've got trapping teams, and they just want to share that up the upper Moak, and obviously we've got all those field catchment plans on the Moak and the Ripia River. So when we look at what work the regional council is doing, it's just good to see that from a mana whenua perspective, especially all that top Central Plateau areas, Māori ownership, apart from DOC, like you said, and then those Māori land blocks, we've got a number of initiatives going in that pest control, and a bit of conifer. So yeah, just need to say that for a take off, just so support the work that the regional council are doing in those upper areas in relation to control, because it all flows down the river. So,
Thank you.
We'll see you back this afternoon?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Actually, going to
Thanks,
go back
Stephen.
with the slide because I've missed it. Missed two things. Sorry. Another challenge for us, Chilean needlegrass. Reason we deal with Chilean needlegrass is because it's a threat to farming in Hawke's Bay. Displaces good pasture. It's not edible when it's seeding, and the seed can cause animal health issues by hissing wool, meat, skin. Pretty invasive in dry, low fertility country, which Hawke's Bay has a fair amount of. And it's really hard to ID when it isn't seeding. You can only identify it from Labour weekend through to about Christmas. So right now is the time when it's aerially seeding. When it isn't aerially seeding, it just looks like any other grass. So a plant can lie in wait for a long time before somebody discovers it. You've got to have a pretty well-trained eye to spot it when it isn't seeding. Spreads in a variety of ways, all human or stock-led, but it can move in water as well. And once a property has Chilean needlegrass, one round of control is not enough to get rid of it all. It seeds twice a year. So I mentioned the aerial seeding just before, but in the autumn it actually seeds underground. There's seed that lives in the root ball called clystogen seed, and it germinates then. So if you cannot see what you're dealing with and it's seeding below ground, it is a real problem. And based on climate modelling, it's got potential to infest 15 million hectares nationwide. So one key issue that we're facing here is subdivision, actually. We have to deal with more landowners. This increases our overall workload as far as monitoring, machinery inspections, pathway management, and making sure that our level of control is actually adequate. The second issue has been the management of potentially contaminated gravel while still balancing the need for the region to recover and to restore key infrastructure post-cyclone. So we made a controlled area notice to allow movement of this contaminated gravel for specific end uses. Now this did go through quite a bit of trial and error to make sure that we struck the balance right between allowing people to use this gravel to recover and remediate certain issues, but not being comfortable with the risk that spreading Chilean needlegrass around potentially. So now we're talking with local contractors to formulate a process to eliminate or minimise potential for any seed movement in that gravel. And so now there's a bit of a process in place for commercial extraction to happen for specific uses. And that's what I want to get across. So the next big challenge for us is alligator weed. This was discovered early this year, and it's widely known as one of the world's worst weeds. It really is. It's an aquatic weed, but it's not picky about where it lives. It happily invades land as well. It's toxic to stock, so if stock eat it, it can cause kidney damage, liver damage. In really bad cases, they can go blind. It affects native fish spawning by minimising the ability for a native fish to access the banks to spawn on. Forms big rafts, grows really quickly. The plant can double in size in 2 months with pretty much no effort. And it will outcompete any fodder crop or pasture grass. If it gets into a cropping or farming situation, it will just outcompete quite vigorously. So, every regional council in New Zealand takes this seriously, really seriously. And so when we discovered it, one of the first things we did was talk to other regional councils to take on their learnings before we did anything else. It's declared as an exclusion pest under our RPMP, which gives us the right powers that we need to manage this weed under the Act. So this is ground zero for where we discovered alligator weed. This is actually the eastern side of Lake Whātuma. This is quite a pretty photo, but there's alligator weed in here. So those red circles actually just for context. If I was to circle every patch of alligator weed in that photo, it wouldn't look too flash, honestly. So you can sort of see there's a mixture of land types there. Obviously there's the lake itself, and then there's the sort of marshy margins, and then further back towards the poplars on the other side, further inland, that's a bit more firm ground. That's a pasture situation. It was formerly grazed, and alligator weed is all through that as well. So there's quite a bit of it in this photo. Pretty much all the bottle green stuff that you can see, similar to the stuff inside the circles, that's all alligator weed, and it's moving quite quickly. So it moves around via fragmentation. The smallest fragment, if it breaks off, can reroute and form a whole new colony somewhere. Most ways it moves around are human-led, so it can move on machinery, can move by disking it up and fracturing it up, but it can also fragment naturally and move down waterways. That's its main natural method of spread. So when we did our delimiting survey, we surveyed the entirety of the Whātuma Basin and the only outlet. So this photo is taken in the Mangatarata stream, which is the only outlet to Lake Whātuma. And this floodgate is an obstacle for where a fragment has come down the river and established itself on the obstacle there. And so there'll be 3 people in this little team. So 2 of my staff here sifting through that floodgate, removing alligator weed bit by bit. And the person taking the photo would have probably been standing about 2 or 3 metres downstream with a butterfly net, making sure that anything suspicious that was coming down the stream after the guys had worked on it was being picked up on. So a reasonably labour-intensive process, and a really good example to show how it can move via fragmentation.
Matt, excellent presentation, particularly the photos. They're my favourite. But I do want to leave some time for questions.
I've got one more
Oh,
slide.
you've only got one slide. Okay, excellent.
Yeah. So the future, we're currently already implementing the operational plan, and on a whole, the programs haven't been too badly impacted by the cyclone. There's been the odd access issue here and there, as everybody else has experienced as well, but the team have been quite flexible and chopped and changed work to suit so that things are still happening. Alligator weed's going to be a real challenge for us to manage. Difficult to eradicate, spreads easily, but I think we've got a real shot at it. And Chilean needlegrass is currently being reviewed. We've got an external consultant in to review the status of this pest and to make sure that to examine whether our program's fit for purpose or not. And that report's due to come to us quite shortly, actually. And if MPI reduce their funding that they've been giving to us to control wildlife conifers, that will also be quite a challenge for us to maintain the gains that we've already made through that Central Plateau area. And yeah, I just want a bit of a shout out to my team. It's been a rough year, and they're good people, passionate people, hard-working people. I'm really pleased to be able to work alongside them, and yeah, they deserve a bit of credit.
Yeah. I certainly do. Thank you. Particularly when you see the photos and you see what they're doing. I'm going to lead off with the first question, please. The Chilean needlegrass review that's being done, is that going to inform us if eradication is possible, or are we past that point?
No, we're essentially past that point.
We're past that point. Okay, thank you. Questions? Yes.
Kia ora, Chair. Thank you, Matt. Great presentation, and tautoko, your last point, just to thank the team also. Okay, so I'm going to have a beat up on the pests first, and then I'll go to the operations plan. So although it's beautiful but probably quite deadly, the alligator weed, I hear that there's a great partnership there with mana whenua from Te Oho Mauri, who are really enjoying working with the team down in Central Hawke's Bay, so that's great to hear. And then we hear from Peter around the conifer project there. So my question is there a space in whether it brings value to the operational plan to talk about partnerships and relationships somewhere in that plan where appropriate? Because I think a part of us managing, eradicating, whatever it looks like, we need our communities and those partnerships to be strong. So I think there is value to have place in the operational plan to discuss that however you see fit. But I think that's something that's maybe missing that can be included. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely agree with you. Just want to write it down.
Well done.
That wasn't a question.
Councillor, you've got another question?
No, that wasn't a question, but thank you.
It was. Can it be included?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, Chair. Look, I'd echo our other chairs. statements there, and just note that in the biodiversity space, in the paper that comes up later on, there's a really strong recognition of the power of the leverage that you get from working with the community. So I think this is a space where you've got a really, really busy team fighting fires everywhere, and if there is an ability to step back, take a breath and go, well, how maybe we'll be able to do that differently for some pests possibly, there might be something in there. Given time, I want to talk about three things. This is in the order of priority: deer, PSA, gold clams, Cotoneaster, right? This is the one shot we get a year to talk about the work program and to review what's going on. So I do think it's worth, and it's the importance of what you do justifies the time. And I'm quite happy to cut into my lunchtime if possible. Right. But I'll start, and look, I'll go to deer, and if we've got time, we'll come back to the other ones. Okay. But we can. Some of those might be offline. Sure. What I want to make about deer is this question about our responsibilities under Part 2 of the Biosecurity Act to provide regional leadership to prevent, reduce or eliminate adverse effects of harmful organisms. And we know, and there's a couple of things we know and we think. One is that we know anecdotally, at least, we've got an increasing problem with deer, and that's impinging on our productive community, the productive farming community, but also it's impinging on our biodiversity response, our ability to remediate our hill country because of the pest pressure that comes on, and it hugely escalates the cost of establishing anything other essentially than pine and maybe eucalyptus, right? So we've got a massive problem there. I hear regularly from farmers that they're doing what they can in terms of the water coming off their land is getting cleaner, but they see dirty water coming out of the dock estate where there's no understory, because and you guys know this stuff better than we do, but there's that problem about my question then. So that's the setting. The question is, what can we do, and is there a space under that duty in Part 2 of the Act to be more proactive about leading conversations around deer control in Hawke's Bay? Thank you.
Yeah, so I can attempt to answer that. It's a shame Ian Maxwell is away at the moment, because he has actually been involved, and I believe still is involved in national conversations around how we manage feral deer, because it is a national issue. It's just not a Hawke's Bay issue. In regards to our approach, we have the Pride Ecosystem Program where we're deer fencing everything we can, because deer are such a significant issue in our region. Equally, we will work with interested landowners in trying to manage deer if we can, but the problem with deer controllers is it's very expensive. You've got men on the ground, and unless you have a large coordinated approach, very challenging to manage deer because they're so transient, they can move long distances. In regards to the legal side of it, deer are declared pests under the Wild Animal Control Act, so we can't actually legally access land under the Biosecurity Act to control deer. That sits under the Wild Animal Control Act, so that's the advice that's being given nationally in regards to the legalities on that side. We have looked at managing deer under the Biosecurity Act, and they are in the plan, but as mentioned, we can't actually enforce that control if landowners aren't willing. So there's a broader conversation that needs to be had, and we're currently having conversations with Department of Conservation around that, but again, it's funding. It always comes back to funding and the costs of feral deer. So all I can really state to that is our approach is to deer fence as much as we can, work with proactive landowners, continue to promote the fact that deer are a really significant pest. They're not a good thing to have in your backyard, even though you can put some in your freezer, and advocate for through DOC and other channels to try and get more coordinated deer management. And I'd love to see in Hawke's Bay a feral deer management strategy put in place whereby we can have those conversations with all the parties, both recreational users and hunters, right through to forest and bird, to actually have a management plan in place we all agree to, but that's going to take time, and that's part of those conversations Ian is also on at a national level.
Yeah, Kilra, I guess my point would be, if that can feature somewhere in the work program as on the list, then will give us a little more confidence that it might be elevated.
Yeah, appreciate that.
But yeah, no, I understand completely the challenges, the financial and otherwise. Thank you.
Yes, and the Forest and Bird presentation the other day was very clear on that being a priority for them. So we're
and it is worth tabling that at Forest and Bird. Highlighting the carbon opportunity. So you know, so there is there are other, there are more and stronger incentives now, particularly from the opportunity to start sequestering carbon again in our dock estate.
I'm going to leave your other questions for now, but I do think when we come into the new year, into our first EICC committee meeting, Ian will be back. By then we can have a conversation around how we progress that conversation. Councillor Foley.
Thanks, Chair. Just in the interest of time, I won't really talk to Chile and needlegrass today, but perhaps save it for when the review comes out, and no doubt we'll be having a big discussion about that then. Possums, don't really have a question, but just obviously disappointing. Understand why we're deferring it, but yeah, there'll be a lot of people disappointed around that. There'll be some that won't be disappointed. I guess just hopefully we've still got the confidence that we can contain the populations. One question I've got is Californian thistle. So you've noted in there's 2 releases. A couple of questions. Do you follow those up to check that the release has been successful in terms of, the population is there, year 2, year 3 increasing? And I note it's not actually on the list of pests in the management plan. So just querying that. I mean, I don't question the control of it. It's a very invasive pest from about now through to autumn as they come up in the pastures. But yeah, just question why it's not on that list, but we are still doing control work.
Kind of a pest where we've realised that there's a need out there to control it, but there's a tool in place which is biocontrol, the Californian green thistle beetle. We do monitor those releases. It can sometimes be not that specific though. It depends on the property. Sometimes they get monitored more regularly than others, but on the whole, we do follow up on the releases that we make to make sure that they've established, or whether it's a bit of a dead duck and it hasn't taken. So that can and does happen.
Excuse me, Matt, can you speak to the microphone so they can hear you around the room?
Yeah, so we've essentially realised that there's a tool out there in biocontrol that we release into the landscape. We do follow up those releases. The monitoring schedule is somewhat erratic though. It's not every site. It's not every year either. It's sort of an as and when, because we have to factor in as well. There's a bit of fluctuation in the available numbers of our biocontrol agent. We harvest it from 1 or 2 sites and then we transport it across the district to release it. Some years we don't actually get any. We don't. There's not enough of a population at that site to really harvest some off and transfer them. So those years are generally where more release monitoring actually happens, because there's no point actually doing any releases. So you go and monitor ones you've done in the past. So it's not necessarily a structured program. It's sort of something that's done as and when time allows for.
Yeah, and the only thing to add in there too, so yes, it's not included in the regional pest management plan. There's a really strong set of criteria for a pest to be within the plan, and part of that is actually having or requiring rules to be able to deliver that program under the Biosecurity Act, and actually being able to have a meaningful impact on that pest. California thistles wouldn't really be one of those pests that meets the rules. They're spread everywhere. However, that doesn't preclude us from actually still assisting in some way, and it's a very low cost program whereby we can have quite a meaningful impact. So we do that outside the RPMP.
I had a very quick question. The 11% of the properties that failed on the RTC possum, is that about the standard amount every year when you do the testing? Is it about 10, 11% of, or is that higher than usual?
I'd actually have to go back and look at the data to be able to confirm that.
It would be good to see if that's changing or relatively consistent. Councillor Williams?
Yeah, thank you. I'll try and be very brief. Look, it's about plan agility in a way, in the sense that we now know that one of our exclusion pests is here, so it's no longer by definition an exclusion pest. Golden clams, which I think was Councillor Harding's concern underneath deer, which I share. How fast can we and should we get golden clams into our list of exclusion animals, given the havoc that they are likely wreaking in the Waikato?
So currently they have now been declared an unwanted organism. So there is powers there through MPI to respond and manage that incursion. The incursion response is also sitting with MPI, but every regional council is incredibly concerned. It's going to be one of those pests where they simply do not have the tools to manage it. And so it's now around how do we prevent it from spreading. So there is a collective that is working through the Biosecurity Working Group, keeping in close contact with MPI in regards to that. And we're really relying on really tight measures in regards to advocacy and wash down, check, clean, dry, the classics. And we are doing lots of eDNA monitoring as well in an attempt to pick that up early. What does it mean? It means essentially we're not going to be able to go in and control it, very unlikely. However, it means we can probably put restrictions in place to try and stop it from spreading. So it is already declared a pest, and we do have, I guess, the correct powers to be able to respond to that through MPI.
Regardless of the fact that it's not in our plan as yet?
Regardless, yeah, because it's declared an unwanted organism, so that's a national approach as opposed to just regional. Yeah.
Thank you.
More questions?
Second crack. I did have 4 on the list here, and look, I do note that we 15 minutes in terms of our timetable. We actually had central government recovery before lunch rather than after lunch, so that's an extra 15 minutes in my book.
Well, thank you for that. I think as chair I'll manage that. But yes, you may have another go.
Thank you. Look, so I just wanted to bring up the question of PSA, and this is a recovery issue. So this is the disease, particularly for kiwi fruit, and just to convey the concern of the kiwi fruit sector around abandoned orchards. Now, we have a phytosanitary pest program that works in conjunction with Hawke's Bay Fruit Growers Association, and that's long-standing and works well, and de-escalates most issues. But we're in an extraordinary time where we've got multiple abandoned orchards, both kiwi fruit as well as apples. So this is a really heightened thing, but also PSA is not included. I'm pretty sure it's not on that list, the phytosanitary list at the moment, but it is of grave concern to the kiwi fruit sector. So I just wanted your response to that and our ability to be flexible around that.
Challenging. So if we were to add that to the regional pest management plan, we would have to open up the plan and go through a partial plan review, do a lot of consultation. We've been through this with the Boston review. In saying that doesn't mean it's off the table, but it's something that you're talking at least 6 months process-wise to get that through, and the process would need to be funded. So it's something we could discuss after this to see what the opportunities are. Yep.
Thank you. And just look very briefly, every time I drive to Wairoa, and our Wairoa colleagues could back me up on this, there's a thing, and I think it's Cotoneaster, and it's everywhere, and I just thought it's probably in our plan somewhere, but it's not. Am I,
Yeah,
is it Cotoneaster, and is it a problem?
There is a potential it's Cotoneaster, yes. Yep. It's again one of those widespread pests where we could spend millions on trying to reduce it and contain it, and we don't have that. So with the plan, we really focus on pests where we think we can have a meaningful impact. Cotoneaster on the invasion curve, it's rock and rolling a bit like COVID, it's up the higher end. So it's one of those, we'd love to control it, but it's just a financial thing and where it sits on what we can achieve. Yeah. But hey, look, people can ring us up, we can give them advice, we can talk to them about best products. Yeah, it just means we won't come and control it for them.
Thank you.
And Cotoneaster is actually one we do get a few calls about advice-wise, so we do what we can to help them out there.
It does seem, biosecurity is one of our primary responsibilities, and it does seem strange that, as you say, we kind of only get this one shot at this point in the year. So am I hearing probably it's worth an offline conversation, probably when Ian is back, to talk about some of the specific things we'd like to go into a bit more, and we could look at putting a workshop or another paper through to EICC. Is that, am I getting that feeling? Yeah? Okay. So there are some recommendations to receive the report and also to adopt the operational plan for 23-24. Someone happy to move those? Yep. Councillor Harding and Councillor Roadley. Would you like to make some more comments? You might get a third bite. Councillor Harding, no? Okay. Councillor Roadley, would you like to make some comments?
No, but I am looking forward to having more regular and more frequent avenue to discuss it in the new year, so that would be
okay. Any other comments online? No? Yes, Will? Councillor Fox?
Oh, thanks, Chair. Just to re-emphasise, really looking forward to, first of all, thanks, Matt and Mark, for the report and all the work, but really looking forward to that Chilean needlegrass review report to come back. It's certainly been in my time as a councillor representing Tamatea, you know, one of the more regular topics of conversation down there with my constituents. So, yeah, myself and a lot of people will be hanging off the recommendations to come back.
Okay. So all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Thank you. Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Matt, for your first presentation. Excellent. Really enjoyed it.
Tolerant of my mistakes. Cheers.
Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you at the next one. So we're going to break for lunch. Should we have a whole half hour? Should we come back at 15:15, or do you want to shorten up a bit? How's everyone feeling?
20 minutes?
Sorry?
It's not here, Chair.
A little bit longer at the other
Ah,
I thought you were going to get clear the self-employment piece.
okay.
Chair, the
We need to allow.
on our list of to come to council or to come to EICC, maybe we should schedule that report once Ian's back, and so that we don't lose sight of it needing to come back.
You mean the report on Chilean needlegrass?
Yeah.
Yes, that will come back
And will
formally, definitely.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of discussion about some of the other issues like the deer, etc.
Yeah.
They could be, or PSA, or
Yeah, I'm
et cetera,
interested in the things that are not in the plan.
Exactly.
Or in how they get to be in the plan and how they get excluded,
Exactly.
and things like varroamite and
probably
the whole list that Zan had, and
probably a conversation or a
who
workshop.
drafts,
Gets in it.
who drafts, you know, what goes, what's in and
I
what's
think
out.
it might be helpful through you, Chair, to
Yes.
have how the process works around regional pest management plans and what is in, and they're regularly reviewed, and there's a process. I think be rest assured that something becomes really urgent, then there's generally national legislation to deal with it. But I think in the next update, let's have a portion of the paper that covers the process.
Yes, excellent, thank you.
Very
Gareth,
protracted
if you just
process.
add that on
It
our
is
list.
painfully long and protracted.
You're dealing with a pest, it takes one bucket full and it takes you 3 years to change the plan to deal with it.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So back at, well, it's not here. We better have half an hour because the food hasn't even arrived. So back at 1:15.
Okay.
Okay.